Tonight, hundreds of people are gathered at a Cal Allen church to remember those who lost their lives Friday in the Robstown shooting. Our Marissa Cummings attended the service and shares how some of the victims will be remembered. It's our top story.
Grace United Methodist Church opened their doors to allow a space for friends and family to grieve the death of Thelma Montalvo and her 13-year-old grandson.
Opportunity for kids to just gather and grieve and pray and just spend some time together.
The victims weren't members of the church, but the young boy went to a school with many of the kids in the congregation. The godmother of the 13-year-old and cousin to Montalvo, Perla Wheeler, says a service like this is necessary for people to process.
Most of the community or the people, our friends, colleagues, are just devastated. They're shocked. They can't believe it.
Wheeler says she's slowly coming to terms with what has happened, but can't help but to get emotional thinking about one of the last things Thelma Montalvo told her.
I want to become like you. She said, because you have so much faith, and I want to be like you.
Wheeler was not the only one to share memories of the two victims.
Like all the time, we would always sometimes talk about good times that we had with the boys and how much the boys were such good friends.
We did long walks, and she never got tired. She was always there to support him.
The service concluded with a prayer and counseling for those who needed it. Marissa Cummings, 3 News.
And our thoughts go out to everybody involved, and the city is working to keep counseling available for everybody in the community this week.